What's cracking, people? Back with another reaction, back with some more acid-techno. We're back with a cool acid-techno remix from dynamic duo Chris Liberator and Sterling Moss. Mentioned it before, these guys have been making incredible acid-techno tunes with like power and ferocity and sort of like vivid, like lush acid work for about a dozen years now. I think some of their first tunes were like '08 or '09. I think I'm Bored was one of the first. I think that was maybe '08. Acid Wah Wah Wah, I think that was like '09. So yeah, they've been making wicked acid techno for over a dozen years at this point. So shout out to Chris and Sterling. And we're going to listen to an acid techno mix they did of a tune that is originally by a sort of like industrial kind of metal band. Which is to say, I don't know much about them, but I do remember reading online that Tribazik, again, is sort of like an industrial influenced kind of metal, like heavier rock band. And this is a tune they did called Spacetime Collapse. I like the name of that. You know, I'm into astronomy and cosmology and so on. And, you know, there are sort of like such large gravitational forces that they actually collapse in on themselves and, you know, create holes essentially in space-time. We call them black holes. But yeah, ultimately I like the name. And this, as I said, is an acid techno mix by Chris and Sterling. Shout out to the artwork. I do enjoy the artwork of the release. This is from 2013, and I don't know much about the album that this comes from Tribazik. I will point out though this is copyrighted and produced 2013 by Skyride Records. I have another record from Skyride, which is a acid techno. It has like a hardcore mix and a couple different kinds of mixes, including an acid techno remix by The Geezer. And it's another tune that's like originally, you know, a totally different genre and then has been remixed as acid techno. So apparently Skyride did this a few times where they made releases that were you know, sort of like the original of like a non-electronic dance music kind of tune of any genre, and then multiple remixes, again, either hardcore and acid techno and so on. This one has a breakcore remix, I should point out, by the Venetian Snares. So yeah, oh, and there's an IDM mix. I don't know much about that genre. I've heard of it. I think it's, you know, like I think it got going like after 2000. So like some of the genres that have come about in the last 15 or so years, like I'm aware of them, but like not really by experience, just by like seeing like, oh, like okay, so this is a new style that they're playing at techno parties or electronic music parties. But yeah, let's get to it. This is Chris Liberator. Let me enunciate better. And Sterling Moss and their acid techno mix of Tribazik Spacetime Collapse. I do want to point out, I love when labels have sort of patterns like this, because when they're spinning on the record they can be very transfixing, although as a DJ sometimes, you know, you're worried about getting hypnotized. Nevertheless, let's get to it. Chris Liberator, Sterling Moss, the acid techno mix of Spacetime Collapse by Tribazik on Skyride. Let's get a start on the proper RPM. That sort of like creaking gurgle of percussion. Like a bullfrog. Hints of a guitar line. Oh, you can already hear the acid. Ready to gurgle into the tune more properly. Sort of spacey, like space wind sort of sounds, like kind of getting at the title a little bit. Meanwhile, the acid engines just continue to like 1 degree hotter, 1 degree hotter. Gurgle, 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 gurgle. It's like we're going at like, you know, approaching light speed, so these like sounds, it's like entire worlds we're passing that we're just hearing kind of faint echoes of. like mechanical, like washed out vocal, presumably from the original, the guitar riff, presumably from the original. Now the acid is like rolling a little more. Like a sharp little accent, like before it rolls around now, like at the back end of the riff. Do-do-do. 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 The smashing cymbal, a nice addition. Cymbal, man. You can tell it's about to clean up. It just feels like it's going to clean up a little bit. It's like, you know, I haven't listened to this in a while, and maybe it's partially just I'm remembering it, but the times when the track starts to get kind of like full and kind of claustrophobic and noisy, and you know it's going to peel some of that tension away and go into like a more stripped down interlude and perhaps reload once again. That washed out. It wasn't really a shout. But washed out like a tribal yell or something. Not to be confused with the rebel yell. Isn't the acid just like electrically gurgling away, especially like in the lower sort of end? Like some high sort of accents too. Sort of like guitar rhythm. I love that sort of like drifting, faded, melancholic guitar. Acid getting like really kind of like chirpy and alarm style. I love that little accent riff. some alien broadcast like out in space that we're only like, we can't decode it or like translate it. Love that little guitar riff as the end of the measure, like precursor. And it does kind of, maybe not like a big like riff like some tracks like that are kind of punk rock style, but like the acid work kind of has that like, lower end punk rock guitar feel to it a little bit. Lost in like a dimensional vortex in a collapsed region of space-time, and beyond its event horizon you can't see what happened to them. You can just see where they were as they went in, and that's it. Work well in an outro, like blending into something else. It feels like compared to a lot of their other tunes, the kick drum is a little more restrained, a little more kind of like rounded off. Where a lot of times it's raw, really like smashes you. Not raw as in like unrefined, but raw as in like has a heavier like impact, but here it feels like it was chosen to sound a little bit more like the kick drum of like rock drum set perhaps. Yeah, I really do enjoy it, and I hadn't listened to that one in a while. I forgot it was as good as it was. And it's funny, there's a lot of tunes in the acid techno world, some by Chris, as well as on Dave DDR's Kosh label in particular, where acid techno and different kinds of rock are mixed. I didn't remember, or like this one is in that vein, but it feels less like a rock tune than some of the others that have sampled like rock, like guitar lines and vocals and so on. So yeah, like some of the tunes on the Kosh label, as I mentioned, it feels more like you took a full rock tune and a full acid techno tune and combined them. This one feels more like you took a couple elements from the metal industrial tune, if that's, again, like just because a band has like a sort of overall label, it doesn't mean every tune they make is in that style. But assuming this is kind of like a metal tune like some of their others, it felt like more Chris and Sterling took elements and then made an acid techno track with hints of this other tune, and it was less like they were fused together. But I dig it. I really do enjoy it. Let me know what you think of that one. Let me know if you have any Skyride records yourself. Other than that, thank you for listening and watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.